Which nations have had the most Queens Regnant? Thank you to Stamps.com for sponsoring this video. Through most of history, male monarchs were the norm. Their wives held the title of queen or empress, but they were merely consorts with little real power. Many monarchies, like France, the Ottoman Empire, and Bhutan, have strictly barred women from inheriting the throne and have never had a queen regnant, or a queen in her own right, while others have rules loose enough that a handful of women have had the opportunity to claim the throne. Some achieved this by outliving their brothers or not having any. Some by seizing power from their husbands or male relatives, and a few actually married their own brothers in order to share the throne. One nation on our list actually had a matrilineal monarchy for over 300 years. Let's take a look at the top 7 nations who have been ruled by 10 or more queens regnant. First, some ground rules on qualification. 1. As political maps change dramatically over time, I will be looking at modern borders and including any female monarchs who ruled lands fully or partially within a nation's current borders at any period in history. 2. I will be including queens regnant who were co-monarchs with someone else. Even if they shared a throne, they still had more access to power than a consort. 3. I will not include legendary queens, only those who are historically verified. Several nations have had a fair number of female rulers. The Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem and the island of Huahain have each had 5. The Byzantine Empire, Madagascar, Thailand and Malaysia, and Sri Lanka have had 6. Angola, Bali, South Africa, and Tibet have had 7. Cambodia has had 8, and Russia has had 9. Ranking in at number 7, with 10 ruling queens and empresses, is Japan. After years of warfare between kings, the people chose as their leader a shamaness, Queen Himiko of Yamatai. She ruled from 189 to 248 CE. Where her kingdom of Yamatai was located is still debated. She was keeper of a sacred mirror, symbol of the sun goddess, and remained unmarried so that she would not have to share her power. When Himiko died, a man took the throne, and warfare engulfed the kingdom. The council decided to put 13-year-old Queen Toyo on the throne instead, and peace was restored. In 593, Empress Suiko took over after the death of her brother. She was the first of 8 Empress Regnants of Japan. She introduced Buddhism and many Chinese customs to the nation, including the calendar. Empress Kogayoku succeeded her husband, but abdicated after an uprising. She regained the throne and ruled until her death. Empress Jito succeeded her husband's uncle, then abdicated for her grandson. When he died at 23, his mother became Empress Jinmei. She ruled for 10 years but abdicated for her 14-year-old daughter, Empress Jinsho. She ruled for 9 years and abdicated in favor of her nephew. Empress Koken received the throne from her father in 749, but was later deposed. She became a Buddhist nun but had a forbidden affair with a commoner monk, Dokyo. Koken was able to take back the throne, and she and Dokyo plotted to make him co-emperor. But when the empress died of smallpox, her lover was exiled. 900 years elapsed before there was another Empress Regnant. The shogunate took power, and emperors were relegated to figureheads. In 1624, Empress Meisho was enthroned at the age of 5. Though she had brothers, she was chosen for her vulnerability. At 18, she was ordered to abdicate in favor of her brother, who soon died of smallpox. Empress Go Sakuramachi ascended the throne after her brother's abdication in 1762. 15 years of drought and a comet caused unrest, and the people attempted to overthrow the shogunate and restore imperial power. But they failed, and the empress was forced to abdicate in 1771. Go Sakurumachi was the last Empress Regnant of Japan. In 1868, imperial power was restored under Emperor Meiji. Among many legal reforms was the exclusion of women from the succession. The current emperor, Naruhito, has only one child, a daughter, Princess Aiko. There has been debate about changing the law to allow women to inherit the chrysanthemum throne, but her uncle Fumihito and his son Hisahito remain next in line. At number 6 is Hawaii, with 13 queens. In ancient times, each of the major Hawaiian islands had their own monarchy. It was considered essential to keep the royal bloodline pure, so siblings regularly married each other and ruled jointly. There were many earlier reigning queens, but the following are historically verified. Ululani was queen of Hilo, Kapu'anaika, Kamuliwahain, Haulani, and Kanalai were queens of Molokai. Kukaniloko and Kalaimanuai were queens of Oahu. Kamakahelai ruled Kauai, Kaikelani, Kekamahana, and Kekelaniwain ruled the Big Island of Hawaii. Her daughter, Kalani Kwalele Iwai, ruled from 1695 to 1725. She had 4 husbands, including her brother and co-ruler, and she had children with all of them. In 1810, her descendant, Kamehameha the Great, unified the islands into the Kingdom of Hawaii. His descendant, Liliuokalani, was an influential royal throughout her life and wrote the song Aloha Oi. By this time, the royals had stopped practicing incest. Liliuokalani married an American. She inherited the throne in 1891, after her brother's death. She spent her reign trying to protect the monarchy and the Hawaiian people from the pro-American faction, but she was ultimately placed under house arrest at her palace and forced to abdicate. The United States annexed Hawaii in 1898. Liliuokalani died in 1917 and didn't have to see her kingdom become the 50th U.S. state in 1959. Number 5 is Italy, though there has not been a Queen Regnant of Italy since its unification in 1861. Across the many monarchies which once existed within its borders, there have been a total of 14 Queens Regnant. The Ostrogoths were a German dynasty who ruled the peninsula in the 500s. Amalasuentha was regent for her son, but she took power after his early death. She was a wise queen, but her gender caused an uprising, during which she was murdered. 500 years later, in 1194, on the island of Sicily, Costanza I inherited the throne after the death of her brother. She was married to Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI. The couple had their first child when Costanza was 40, and many were skeptical. The queen breastfed her son in public to silence the rumors. Costanza II was an only child. Her husband, Pedro III of Aragon, pushed his way in as co-ruler. Likewise, Maria shared the throne with her husband, Martin the Younger. On the mainland in Naples, Joanna I inherited the throne from her grandfather. She was wed to her cousin, Andrew of Hungary. He thought he would be co-monarch, but his wife had other plans. It is not clear if the queen was collaborating with the nobles who stole into their bedroom, strangled Andrew, and threw him out the window. Queen Joanna married one of the conspirators, but he immediately stole her power. He died of bubonic plague, and she refused to share power with either of her next 2 husbands. Joanna II inherited the throne at 41. Despite 2 marriages and several lovers, she was childless. Her husband imprisoned her and took her power, but her people rioted and chased him out of the country. Joanna ruled for 21 years and continued her love affairs, but never remarried. In the 1500s, both Sicily and Naples came under the control of the Kingdom of Aragon. Thus, in 1516, they were both inherited by Juana of Castile, known as the Mad. More on her a little later. In the Middle Ages, the island of Sardinia was divided into 4 kingdoms, each ruled by a judge. Elena ruled Gallura from 1203 to 1218. The Pope tried to force her to marry his nephew, but she refused. Benedita ruled Cagliari. Adelasia was one of 2 sisters who could have inherited Torres. She was elected because her powerful husband could back her up. Joanna of Gallura was briefly mentioned by Dante Alighieri while he passed through purgatory in the Divine Comedy. Eleanor was judge of Arborea after her unpopular brother was killed. She went to war with Aragon and forced them out of Sardinia. She came to rule most of the island and was well respected for writing a code of law. By the 1700s, most of Italy was under Spanish control. In 1738, King Carlos III traded the Duchy of Parma in northern Italy to the Habsburgs in exchange for Naples and Sicily. Thus, Parma was counted among Holy Roman Empress Maria Theresa's vast possessions from 1740 until 1748, when another treaty handed it back to Spain. Marie-Louise was the daughter of Holy Roman Emperor Francis II and was Napoleon's second wife. Thus, she was Empress of France and Queen of Italy from 1810 until his defeat in 1814. Marie-Louise received the Duchy of Parma as a consolation prize. She installed her lover as prime minister. They had 4 children together, and when Napoleon died, they married morganatically. When she died at 56, Parma was shuffled to a Spanish prince. Number 4 with 15 queens is the United Kingdom. Cartamandua was a Celtic queen of the Brigantes tribe in northern England around the time of the Roman invasion in 43 CE. She pledged her loyalty to Rome, while her more famous contemporary, Queen Boudica of the Iceni, led a massive uprising. Boudica's army burned down the Roman city of Londinium, but they were eventually defeated. After the Romans gave up trying to conquer the unruly Celts, the Anglo-Saxons came in and formed several kingdoms. Sigisbert of Wessex ruled in 672, first with her husband and then on her own after his death. Ethelflad of Mercia was the eldest daughter of Alfred the Great. Upon his death, her brother got Wessex and she got their mother's inheritance of Mercia. She passed the throne to her daughter, Aelfthwen. She only lasted a year before her uncle, Edward the Elder, annexed Mercia to Wessex, creating the Kingdom of England. England had 4 queens. Matilda was one of 2 children of Henry I. When her brother died in a drunken shipwreck, she was away being Holy Roman Empress. By the time she returned to claim the throne, her cousin Stephen had beaten her to it. The pair engaged in a civil war called the Anarchy. Stephen won, but Matilda's son, Henry II, eventually took the crown. Henry VIII's desperate quest for a male heir resulted in 2 annulments, 2 beheadings, and 2 disappointing daughters. His only son, Edward VI, died of tuberculosis at 15. Edward was a devout Protestant and wanted to keep the crown from his Catholic sister Mary, so he wrote a will naming his Protestant cousin, Jane, heir instead. She lasted only 9 days before Mary's army marched to London. Poor Jane was beheaded. For 5 years, Mary burned Protestants and tried to conceive an heir, but she died of uterine cancer, passing the throne to her Protestant sister Elizabeth, famous as the Virgin Queen, who ruled over a golden era of prosperity and creativity. Meanwhile, in Scotland, back in 1286, King Alexander III died with only one living descendant, his 3-year-old granddaughter Margaret. Her father, the King of Norway, refused to send her to Scotland for 4 years. Eventually he was persuaded, but Margaret had a rough crossing and died of seasickness upon her arrival. In 1542, King James V died of battlefield dysentery and left the throne to his 6-day-old daughter, Mary. With Scottish lords and Henry VIII of England getting violent in their pursuit to control the young queen, she was sent to safety in France and wed to King Francois II. He died of an ear infection and Mary returned to Scotland. She fell in love with her handsome cousin, Darnley, but he turned violent and stabbed her secretary in front of her. Darnley's bedroom blew up, and Mary, possibly under duress, married the #1 suspect. The queen fled her furious people, but her cousin Elizabeth I of England had her imprisoned for 19 years. Mary plotted to assassinate Elizabeth and take her throne. Eventually, the English queen ordered her Scottish cousin's beheading. Mary's only son, James VI, inherited childless Elizabeth's throne in 1603, becoming James I of England. His grandson, James II, converted to Catholicism, and his Protestant people invited his daughter, Mary II, and her husband, William III of Orange, to invade and take the throne. They were the nation's only joint monarchs. Mary died of smallpox at 32. Her sister, Anne, became queen. During her reign in 1707, England, Wales, and Scotland were united, creating Great Britain. Anne had 17 pregnancies, but none of her children survived. Queen Victoria reigned for 63 years over a gilded era of colonial conquest and industrial revolution. Her great-great-granddaughter, Elizabeth II, was the eldest of 2 daughters. Her reign lasted 70 years, the longest in British history. Whether a queen ruled a small island or a vast empire, communication was key to success. Mail was so vital to the development of civilization that Egyptian pharaohs created the first postal service back in 2400 BCE. And if you run a small business that relies on sending or receiving anything, then you know how vital the postal service is today. Fortunately, we no longer have to rely on Roman roads or the Pony Express when we have Stamps.com. Stamps.com streamlines all your mailing and shipping, and the app is like having a post office in your pocket, so you can stay on top of things even when you're on the go. Postage rates just went up again, but luckily Stamps.com has the best discounts in the industry, with rates you can't find anywhere else, like up to 89% off USPS and UPS. Keep your mailing and shipping moving at the speed of your business with Stamps.com. Sign up at Stamps.com/teatime for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to Stamps.com/teatime. And now, back to history. Number 3 is Spain with 17 queens. The first female to take power on the peninsula was Toda Aznares. First, she was queen consort of Pamplona, then regent for her 6-year-old son. She grew so influential that when her son came to power, she claimed her own neighboring monarchy of Deggio and Lizarra. Urraca of Leon and Castile inherited the throne after her only brother's battlefield death. She was married to her cousin, King Alfonso I of Aragon, but they hated each other and their kingdoms battled. Petronilla of Aragon was an only child. She ruled for 23 years but was forced to abdicate in favor of her son. Berengaria of Castile was regent to her 10-year-old brother, Enrique I. He was killed when a roof tile fell and struck him on the head. Berengaria inherited the throne, but she knew her male relatives would take it from her, so she kept her brother's death a secret until her 18-year-old son, Fernando III, arrived. She abdicated in his favor after only 3 months. Sancha and Dulce of Leon were Fernando III's half-sisters. As he was away ruling Castile, their father named them joint heirs of Leon. They shared the throne for only 2 months before Fernando rode in and deposed them. Isabel I of Castile took the throne after years of warfare with her older brother, Enrique IV. She was a wise ruler and brought stability and prosperity. She married Fernando II of Aragon, and together they launched Christopher Columbus's voyage, the conquest of Muslim Granada, and the Spanish Inquisition. Isabel passed the throne to her eldest surviving child, Juana. She was known as the Mad. It is said that she stabbed her husband's mistress in the face, and when he died, she wept over his corpse for weeks and refused to bury him. However, her mental illness was likely exaggerated by her father in order to keep control over her kingdom. When her father died, she inherited Aragon as well, uniting much of Spain. But by then, Juana was locked in a convent, while her son, Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, took control of Spain. The Canary Islands off the west coast of Africa are now part of Spain. Queen Inés Peraza ruled there from 1452 to 1477. The small kingdom of Navarre on the border of modern-day France has also had several queens regnant. Joanna I was her father's only surviving child. She was away being queen consort of France, but she did send an army to defend Navarre from invasion. When she died, she left the throne to her son, Louis X of France. He had only one child, Joanna II. France refused to accept a Queen Regnant, but Joanna became Queen of Navarre. Blanca I was an only child. She had to rule jointly with her husband, Juan II. When she died, their daughter, Blanca II, was locked up by her father so that he could remain on the throne. Blanca II died in 1464. When Juan II died, his younger daughter, Leonor, was crowned, but she died 2 weeks later. Her granddaughter, Caterina, became queen at 15. She ruled for 34 years, but was constantly fighting off her male relatives. Joanna III was the only surviving child and inherited the throne in 1555. She converted to Protestantism and was a key player in the French Wars of Religion. When she died in 1572, her son Henri became King of Navarre. He later became King Henri IV of France. His son, Louis XIII, annexed Navarre to France, though it eventually fell back into Spanish hands. The only Queen Regnant of a united Spain was Isabel II. She was the eldest of 2 daughters fathered by Fernando VII. In his desperate hunt for an heir, he used up 4 wives, one of whom died during an agonizing unmedicated cesarean section. Isabel became queen at the age of 3, and her mother spent her regency fighting a civil war with her uncle over the throne. Eventually, Isabel took power. She married Francisco, her double first cousin, but they hated each other. The queen's affairs and her incompetence led her to be deposed in favor of her son. Spain will likely soon get its 18th Queen Regnant. Leonor, Princess of Asturias, is heir to the throne. During her mother's pregnancies, there was discussion about changing the succession from male preference to absolute primogeniture. But when her sister Sophia was born, the issue was dropped. Leonor is technically only heir presumptive. Still, she won't have to battle male relatives for the throne like her ancestors did. Number 2 is Nigeria with 24 queens. The Kingdom of Benin dominated the south from 40 BCE to 1100 CE. Among their many kings, or ogisos, were 2, Imos and Ororo, who are believed to have been female. They ruled consecutively from 1584 to 1618. In the north, the Hausa kingdom had a matrilineal monarchy from about 700 to 1000 CE. Their queens, or kabarars, recorded in the Kanto Chronicle were Kufuru, Jinu, Yakumo, Yakunya, Wanzamu, Yanbamu, Gizer, Inagari, Daurama, Gawata, Shata, Fatatuma, Saidamata, Jamata, Hamata, Sama, Shawata, and Daurama II. The Bornu Empire was ruled by Aissa Kuli because her father had no male heirs. Around 1510, a descendant of the Benin royal family gave birth to twins. This was considered a bad omen, and mother and babies were exiled. One of the twins died young, but the other, Princess Pupupu, grew into a powerful warrior. She founded the Ondo Kingdom. Her descendants are still local royalty today, though they are ruled by a king. Amina was born Princess of Zazau, a state within the Hausa Kingdom. She was favored by her grandfather, and many men tried to win or buy her hand, but none were deemed worthy. She became queen in 1576 after the death of her brother. She immediately ordered her people to sharpen their weapons and go to war to expand Zazau. She forced the other rulers of Hausa to bow to her and pay her tribute in enslaved people. Amina ordered earthen walls erected to protect her borders. Many of them still exist. According to legend, in each town she conquered, she selected the best-looking man and took him to bed with her. In the morning, he would be beheaded, so no man should live to tell the tale. After 30 years of warfare, Amina died at 77. Following her death, women in Hausa were stripped of their rights. Nigeria was colonized by the British in 1884, but Queen Victoria was not considered its queen. The area was declared a British protectorate in 1914, and Elizabeth II was Queen of Nigeria from her ascension in 1952 until 1960, when Nigeria won independence. Number 1, with 28 female rulers, is Egypt. Though there may have been many earlier female pharaohs, the first confirmed by archaeology is Sobekneferu, who inherited the throne in 1806 BCE from her brother. Hatshepsut ruled as regent for her nephew Thutmose III before claiming power as his co-ruler. Nefertiti and her husband, Akhenaten, overhauled the kingdom's religion and moved the capital. After his death, she ruled alone as pharaoh. She was made famous by a stunning bust discovered in 1912. Tusret was regent for her stepson, then ruled after his death. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great of Macedonia conquered much of West Asia and North Africa. When he died, his companion Ptolemy took control of Egypt. Ptolemy had at least 12 children who squabbled over the throne. Two of them, Ptolemy II and Arsinoe II, decided to adopt the ancient Egyptian custom of keeping it in the family. They married each other, and their double claim ensured they got the throne. But the sibling spouses hated each other. Ptolemy poisoned two of Arsinoe's sons. They started a long line of Ptolemaic siblings marrying and sharing the throne. Berenice II married Ptolemy III. Their children, Arsinoe III and Ptolemy IV, married each other. Their son, Ptolemy V, married outside the family to Cleopatra I. Their daughter, Cleopatra II, married two of her brothers, Ptolemy VI and Ptolemy VIII. Her daughter Cleopatra III married her uncle and stepfather Ptolemy VIII. Their children, Cleopatra IV and Ptolemy IX, married. Their daughter Berenice III wed two of her brothers, Ptolemy X and Ptolemy XI. Her daughter Cleopatra V married her cousin Ptolemy XII. In 58 BCE, Ptolemy XII was called away to Rome to prevent the growing empire from taking over Egypt. While he was gone, his two daughters, Cleopatra VI and Berenice IV, seized the throne. They ruled together, but they didn't marry each other. Apparently that would have been too far. When Ptolemy returned, he had his daughter Berenice executed. When he died, the throne went to his married children, Ptolemy XIII and Cleopatra VII. She was the Cleopatra of Elizabeth Taylor and Gal Gadot fame. She and her brother husband had a falling out and went to war. She allied with Roman dictator Julius Caesar to defeat her brother and their sister, Arsinoe IV, who was briefly a rival queen. Ptolemy was killed in battle and Arsinoe was exiled. Caesar proclaimed Cleopatra and her new brother husband, Ptolemy XIV, joint rulers. But Caesar and Cleopatra continued an affair, which produced a son. Mother and child traveled to Rome and lived at Caesar's palace, but he was assassinated and they fled back to Egypt. There, Cleopatra ordered her brother husband's assassination and proclaimed her son as her co-ruler, Ptolemy XV. She soon got into bed with another Roman, Mark Antony. They had 3 children and she assisted him in invading neighboring kingdoms. Their schemes threatened the new Roman emperor, Octavian, and he invaded Egypt. On the eve of the Roman conquest of Egypt, both Mark Antony and Cleopatra died by suicide. In 270 CE, during the Roman occupation, Zenobia, the queen consort of Syria, invaded Egypt and ruled there for 2 years. The Roman army retaliated and she was exiled. While the ancient and Ptolemaic pharaohs dominated what is now northern Egypt, another civilization thrived in southern Egypt and the Sudan, Kush. They had several ruling queens. Nahirko was queen consort but took power in the mid-2nd century. Queen Amon-Rinas stopped the Romans from taking over Kush around 10 BCE. She opened the door for her queen descendants. Aman-Hishakito, Amanitor, Shanak-Dakiti, Amani-Katashan, Amani-Kalika, Patra-Pimani, and Amani-Pilad. 1,000 years later, in 1250, Egypt was under the control of the Ayyubid Sultanate. Shajar al-Dur was born into slavery and taken as a concubine by Sultan Asali Ayyub. Her husband was killed during the Crusades, and Shajar took power as Sultana of Egypt for 3 months. But she was forced to abdicate and marry the new sultan, Is al-Din Aybak. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and check out my other royal history videos. Thank you for watching.